Such a really terrific movie, so special. And now it is my honor to welcome writer-director Keith Behrman, producer Allison Black, and 5 members of his amazing cast: Josh Wiggins, Darren Mann, Taylor Hickson, and Kyle MacLachlan. Thank you all so much for being here. Congratulations on a really special, astute, and so emotionally honest movie. Keith, let's talk about how it came around, the origins of it, the beginnings of it, and we can share a microphone. You got it? And how it came around. It came around from an interesting sort of origin, didn't it?
Yeah, at the time, just prior to this coming out, I was in about a 3-year-long stint of delving pretty deep into meditation and yoga studies, and I wasn't actually entirely sure I'd ever make another film again. But then towards the end of a retreat that I was on, I had a dream one night, and in the dream a young man was talking to his mother in the kitchen. And something about that dream captured my attention, and I wrote it down the next morning, and it just stayed with me. I kept writing some thoughts about that, and the scenes expanded, and pretty soon I realized I was writing another script. And it felt like it was an important story to tell, that whatever was emerging seemed important. And so I decided that I would make another film. And I returned to the city and kept writing notes and thinking about it. And eventually I got to the point where I needed to find a partner to make it with. And I went out, and Allison and I knew each other from a long time ago. But we reconnected through mutual friends and collaborators. And we had a conversation about the story that was emerging, and we decided to work on it together.
And we were just talking just now about how honest the film is and how truthful it feels. Did you talk to real life teenagers, people kind of going through, obviously, or just out of their teens, about their emotions and what they were going through, Keith?
Yeah, when I started to do the early writings on the script, I went to a high school, and I talked to the teachers there, 'cause I wasn't sure. I just didn't know how things worked in school anymore. It's been a while since I've been in a high school. And what's happening behind us?
That's the subway.
Okay.
Rattles, right?
Yeah, so I just wanted, I talked to some kids, and mostly teachers, at that point, mostly teachers. Mm-hmm. And then once Alice and I had a draft that we were happy with, then we showed that to some high school students, and they just basically confirmed that it felt true to them and felt like we were on the right track.
Yeah. And Allison, kind of continuing that idea, what did you want to make sure you got into the film in terms of its truthfulness, its honesty, it's sort of, because it's got so much on its mind, and yet you want to make sure that a story like this retains its honesty. Allison, what did you want to make sure was still in the film, kind of from the beginning of it all the way through to the end?
Well, I'm just thinking back when you asked that question too. When Keith and I were just talking about it when it was sort of at an outline stage, and he just kept saying the same thing, which is what the film is now, which is what he wanted people to take away from it. And that's been a pervasive through line. Even though things have changed, and obviously so much changes from concept and an idea and these scene sketchings onwards to the finished product. But it's interesting because the reviews that have come out this week and today are so beautiful and moving for us, and they're getting what Keith's intention was, which is to really have it feel authentic to both the parents, to the young people portrayed in it, no matter how you identify, to make you feel that this is a movie about self-acceptance, and really that love is love. And don't get bogged down in what other people are calling it, or if you choose to call it something wonderful. But he just wanted people to feel that they were okay. And that's been the through line of honesty, I would say.
And just speaking about love is love, let's have a round of applause for this amazing cast. Let's have one more round because they are so worth it. Josh, one of the things I pick up on your performance is that there's a watchfulness to Frankie. It obviously sort of has to be there in certain ways because of what he's experiencing, but there's also sort of that natural thing that obviously high school students are going through. And it was just sort of an interesting thing that I noticed upon several viewings. What were some of the keys to him for you, keys to the performance?
I mean, any teenager has to navigate life, and that's complicated enough, finding your own identity and where you think you fit in the world, and then trying to do that on top of this whirlwind of an event that's taken place with him and someone who's been his best friend since birth, it's kind of, it shakes the foundation of everything he thought he knew, and so I think it's kind of a slow build of realizing that his life is about to take a really drastic turn, and as much as he may try to, approach Ballas about it and try and, work out the situation, I think there's definitely underlying fear the entire time of losing a best friend and a brother, and I think that, I wanted to portray that throughout the whole performance for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's something that we kind of take for granted sometimes. But Josh, you're pretty much in every scene of the film, right? I mean, you're almost in everyone, because we're seeing it through your point of view and your eyes. I'm wondering, as you approached it, was that something you kind of mapped out in some ways as an actor, kind of recognizing where he went from point A to all the way to point Z?
I don't know. I mean, when I do a role, it's more I like to find it as I go, because I think partly because I'm too lazy to take notes on the script, but I think it's a collaborative process, finding a character, because you want to bring how you view the character, but you also want to bring how the writer or director views the character, and that should morph into what eventually becomes that person. Because I think as an actor, I think it's your job to bring the director's vision to life, and you can bring things that you want, but I think it's it's a two-way street. So that was really important for me, for sure.
Taylor, you bring such depth to your performance as Natasha. There's so many complexities going on with her, or some of the nuances you wanted to make sure are sort of there, even if they're sort of just they're almost like a scent that follows her, like a glance that she can give. What were some of the nuances you wanted to make sure you brought?
Firstly, thank you. Well, I did want her to feel very guarded and defensive at first, so there was a fine line between making the character at first sort of to be able to be sympathized with, and then also having people be confused and interested in her story arc and as to why she was acting out in the way that she was. So it was sort of a slow unfold as she comes to connect with Frankie and the similarities that bring them together and feeling alone. And she wanted a friend just as badly as Frankie wanted a friend. And I think having their history together, he was the only one that I think really knew the truth about her, and vice versa. And I think that allowed them to have a very, very beautiful relationship to develop.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
amazing. You do such a beautiful job.
Thank
Darren, there is also an aspect to Ballas that he is walking a tightrope much like Frankie is, but obviously his tightrope kind of has an aggressive masculinity and another aspect to his struggle going on. What were some of the keys to him that you wanted to bring out?
For Ballas, I just really wanted to make sure that he wasn't one-dimensional, because I think that would have been pretty boring. So, making sure that I really created all these stories for Ballas, scenes that weren't in the film but helped, when I'm talking about things, make them real to me. And that helps me, up the stakes for these things, because it's not just about, kicking his ass and running away, but I really love him, and that's what hurts the most. So I just really wanted to make sure that I focused on making him as dynamic as possible.
In fact, there's a part of the complexity also comes out in the physicality to the role, how Ballas has got that aspect to him. And then when you first sort of see it come to the fore, it's when he's defending the other boy in the locker room, and then to unfortunately sort of see that then be brought out against Frankie. It's a beautiful complexity, isn't it? I'm wondering kind of how you finesse those sort of aspects of the performance.
Yeah, for me, I just really try and go on the journey with the character and try and really become them and try and imagine what it would be like to be in his shoes. I think high school is a pretty difficult place to be going through that kind of thing, and I think a locker room especially. So, really trying to make it as real as possible for myself and just live it with him.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle MacLachlan. Let's have a round of applause for Kyle. And such a beautiful and subtle performance, Kyle. There's a strength to Ray, kind of a quiet strength going on inside of him that we sort of see him really work with his son on trying to find the same kind of quiet strength. What were some of the keys to him for you?
Well, you really hit on it when you said the quiet strength. I've got a son who's 10, and so I'm a dad, and I brought to the performance and to the relationship with Josh a lot of what I believe in as a father, which is, you're there to support, to hear, to listen, not to judge, of course, but to encourage and maybe, helpfully suggest a direction or a way through something. And I found the writing to be so supportive of that. That really was the character, and it's what attracted me to the role. I felt here was an atypical representation of the dad, and one that I really identified with and felt gave some like almost a new direction to this theme, a new way of looking at it, an approach of acceptance and help. And that's what I feel as an adult and as a parent now, that's my responsibility with my son and in the performances. It's to be there for him and to accept him and really enjoy and watch him become who he is meant to be, whatever that is going to be. Yeah. And that was in the script.
We're going to take some questions from the audience in just a moment, and we have a microphone for you, but I just want to follow up on that for one more second, Kyle, and say that that amazing scene that happened 75 minutes in at Ray's apartment, and which is anchored by the scene when he's giving him the coat. And there's this beautiful subtlety to a father giving his son a coat that he thinks he might fit him, and looks at and says, "You look sophisticated now." And I just love that. I love all the things that sort of says and sort of the connotation there from father to son and what that means to be a sophisticated young man in the world, right? And I'm wondering how that scene sort of worked for you and kind of making sure that all those notes worked.
It's a recognition, I think, of a transition there. And it's funny as a dad, and I watch my son go through different phases, and I kind of not mourn, but I miss when he was 2, and I miss the 4. It's natural, but I'm excited about what's to come at the same time. And at 10, I can see him when he was 6, but I can also see him when he's going to be 13, 14, 15, and it's exciting and kind of, frightening at the same time. But I think in that particular scene, it's a recognition of where Frankie's headed, and he's really proud of him, and he's taken aback a little bit by just who this young man is growing up. And I think there's probably a little bit of pride in there. As a parent, you say, "Oh, I think I did a good job," or I did something, maybe more things right than wrong, but you feel that kind of moment, and I think that's part of what was happening in that scene.
Yeah, it's really magical. It's really a magical scene. Just to follow up very quickly, because Keith, that's there's one or two aspects you can read into the title, but the notion of giant little ones is obviously, they're big little kids. These are kids who are in a process. They're not quite adults, but they're not kids yet either, right?
Yeah, and I think that applies really for all the characters, and I think for people in general, that we are who we are, and we feel ourselves inside ourselves, and we know that we know who we are, and then we're out in the world, and that sometimes is not accepted, or we feel that we're not okay, or we can't really be this, or we can't be that, or we can't say this, or we can't wear this, or we can't dance like this, or do this, or and we end up becoming small. And especially if we have to really speak out and be ourselves, and people are saying, "No, you can't do that or say that," then you are a small, you can feel small in the face of that. But when you, as Mo says, when you own it, whatever that is, and you say, "No, this is who I am," and you stand up, then you become giant. Yeah. That was kind of the idea behind the title.
Yeah. I also thought of almost like giant little steps too, like the world was kind of made up of taking little steps, but some of them are bigger than others.
Yeah,
right?
I think there's lots of interpretations to that.
Yeah, it's a great title.
Hello. This is a question for Mr. MacLachlan.
With working with such a like a large group of young actors, is there a difference in?
Wait, you mean I'm not? Oh no, my illusion shattered.
I'm sorry.
Okay, it's bound to happen.
She means other young actors.
Is there a difference between the way young actors work now than like a decade ago?
80 years ago.
Way back when you were
God,
young.
that's such a long time ago. Let me.
Oh, well, have you
Think.
learned any new things from them?
I learned something from everyone here. I was amazed and really moved by the performances because I felt they were so personal and so real and so not forced. And I don't know if it's a different, I can't think back, it's not far long ago. But I think using myself as an example, when I started, I don't think I trusted the camera to be able to capture everything that it can capture. Now I'm sounding like somebody else. Sorry. But I watched them all have that kind of courage to just really be and let things come out of them. And I think they're all wonderful performances. So I was in school too with them, watching them work. You never stop learning.
There were so many long, significant, meaningful, smoldering glances in the movie. And I'm just curious, how do you write that into the script? Do you let the actors play with it? How do you handle something like that where you can't just write it down and say, okay, I want you to smolder when you look across the hallway?
No, I just wrote smolder. Smolder 1, smolder 3, smolder 17. When I write, I really just visualize the film and keep visualizing it over and over and over. And one of the things that's really fun and challenging about writing a script is finding ways to express the mood and the energy and the feel of those things without just overtly stating them, because you can't just overtly state it. So I think I just try to plant those seeds, try to give those, I try to create a feeling and an impression and a sense of what's happening, a sense of what the room looks like and feels like in terms of not so much where furniture is, but just maybe sometimes what the light is like or what the sound is like, or what you hear in the room. And then I think if I can plant enough of those seeds, and the actors will pick up on that and they'll start amplifying that. They'll start finding ways to embody that and express that.
Just to follow up, did that sort of work the other way as well, Keith? Did some things get adjusted as you cast actors and you said, oh, you know what, maybe this might read better this way? Did some of it change some of the stuff in the script and as you were going through?
Yeah, sure. The audition process is fascinating because sometimes the actor will will say something that's a line that's different than what it's written. And I went, oh, that was cool. But since we haven't shot it yet, I go back to the script and I think that happened with Taylor, actually. I think some of the lines he said, I went, oh, that was a better word, so I went back and changed it.
No, it's just because I couldn't remember my lines, and then you made me go back out and remember them.
I was very impressed you came back and you knew them all. It was really good. Definitely, it definitely goes both ways. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I have a question for Josh Wiggins and Darren Mann. Knowing that taking on such a role as these two might come with stigma, did you ever struggle with the idea of that some people might give you negative public attention?
Yeah, I'll answer that
I guess
first.
go. You go first.
That's right. You see how it goes in the film, right? No, when I look at a role, I never look at what their sexual orientation is. I could care less, to be honest. Is the film good? Is the character interesting? Is it something I can explore and learn from and have fun? And do I think it'll be good? Yeah. Don't even look at that. It's second. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're taking roles based on how you think other people are gonna evaluate it or think of it, you're not really doing, the medium justice. I think if you respond to it artistically and respond to the character, and in this case, the subject matter and what it has to say, then everything else, all the positivity that comes out of it is going to far outweigh any, asshole that has some stuff to say.
For sure.
Word.
Thank
But
you.
you know, just want to add
Oh,
to
yeah,
that,
go.
because there are some people who do care,
Mhm.
and there are, we discovered Josh very early, and we offered him the role very early on, and then we discovered Taylor and Darren in the early on auditions as well. But there
Mhm.
were some people in the early phases of auditioning. Some casting directors told us that some young people weren't coming out for the role, some young men. And so I was shocked, and so thankfully we found really talented, amazing people who were willing to do that. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello up there. I was wondering, there's a scene at the table and the mother says something to the effect of, oh, things are getting better. And I guess I just pose a question to everyone, like, do you think that there's kind of a misconception that things are getting better? I'm 25, so I wasn't in high school that long ago. And things weren't that good. People were still pretty homophobic. And I look at my sister who's just in college now, and I don't know, but it seems like her generation is like very accepting, but I could be completely off. And do you think that so I guess that's not really a question, but.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it is. I think it definitely depends on the community, and if you are exposed to that. It also, I think, depends on how you're raised and your parents' ideas. Do you guys get earthquakes here?
Subway's right below you.
Ah. It's my first time in New York.
She's Canadian.
But yeah, I think it. I was brought up in a very small high school. Everyone knew everyone. There's one high school in the community I'm from, and there was a lot of that. There was a lot of rape culture and sexual harassment. There was not a lot of diversity. There were no kids coming out. Any kids part of the LGBT community. There was maybe one, and I think almost everyone made fun of him for it. And he's still a friend of mine today. He moved to the big city because he felt more accepted there, which is awful. But yeah, it is still a problem. I think it just depends on certain communities and if you happen to be individually exposed to that growing up.
Yeah, I think it's possible to recognize how far we've come, but also, there's still stuff that happens. I think this movie, it kind of speaks to that in the sense of you want to reach people that even whether it be they haven't heard about it or met that many people in that community, so they're either uninformed on it or may be more resistant because it's maybe it's strange to them or something. Those are the people that you want to reach with a movie like this, just as much as the people who may be uncomfortable with their sexual identity. You want to reach everybody because I think that this movie is very accessible to everybody, and that's why I think it's a really cool movie to be a part of.
But, I'll just say, don't forget, you can't control what other people think, so don't forget what Mouse said, right? Fuck it.
When we were getting ready to shoot this film, I had this fear that by the time it got made, it was going to be completely irrelevant because I was seeing, as you said, in the high schools and, that there's a lot of acceptance around me. But, I was just last weekend, I went back to the town where we shot this in Canada, north of Toronto. And we screened it there. And I was told by some of the high school kids who were extras in the high school on the swim team in the film, they were describing what their school was like. And it really broke my heart because I was learning that it really wasn't better. And there was actually a suicide 2 weeks before I screened the film. And because for that reason, a young man was harassed because he was gay, and he took his life. So it shocked me, and it also really it made me realize that this film is so much bigger than me or any of us, or a desire to make a movie or a desire to be here. And, it's taken on its own life of being a voice for, hopefully, being a voice for love and acceptance and compassion and also strength. I really love how the character Frankie really embodies a very quiet but deep strength, and they all do in different ways. And so, yeah, I think there's pockets, and I think it's so, now there's places where it is much more widely accepted, and that's beautiful and wonderful, and it's flourishing. But I think it's this constant thing that we have to keep being open-hearted and brave and compassionate and kind and strong and vocal about, because otherwise, you know, it's just this constant dynamic changing thing. And I think of all these kids, or anyone, anywhere who's in some community where they feel alone and alienated. And I just, you know, one of the things that Allison and I are so deeply moved by is the fact that this film is reaching those people. We've had kids tell us that the film changed their life. We had one kid tell us the film saved his life. We get emails from people in the outback of Australia who's, you know, see the trailer and that's enough for them. So anyone who's creating, you know, I just encourage you to create what's, you know, from a place of love and what's in your heart, and know that it's going to reach people who really need to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Film also, just to kind of echo a little bit of something that Kyle said earlier, but it also, the film sort of shows a little bit in a very gentle way how, I mean, communication, how there may be things going on in the culture, but you never know what's going on in somebody's own home. And the communication that obviously is there between Frankie and his mother, played by the great Maria Bello, is we don't see that scene where he talks to her about what's going on, but she knows it. She knows it soon after it's happened, and there's communication there. Whereas Peter Outerbridge as Nick, as Ballas's dad, there's sort of a sense that you're getting of things are being brushed on the carpet of all stripes. The incident with the bike, anything, it's all sort of a very efficient, let's just deal with this and move on kind of thing, and a lack of communication in some ways, right? Yeah.
Oh, so was that a question?
Oh, no, just kind of just a comment. Just, yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah.
I think that's dead on.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Tia. That movie was absolutely incredible, so I just want to acknowledge that. Okay, so my question is for Keith. My heart's beating really fast right now. You made so many interesting directorial choices throughout the film, and one scene that I was really anticipating was Ballas, and I'm forgetting the main character's name.
How dare you?
Frankie, yes. Okay, so one scene I was really anticipating was Frankie and Ballas's reconciliation. So it was sort of something that I thought was going to be like inevitable. How did you make the choice to play the scene out the way you did?
You mean the lack of reconciliation?
He dropped the bike off, and then the
little
flare
heart thing.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I feel like a lot of the stuff is not really a choice because it just comes in the writing process. Like I'm as surprised and delighted as writing as you are, maybe in that moment watching it, because I'm writing it, and then that heart thing was written for Ballas and his girlfriend in the earlier party scene. And there was actually some lines about that, but it didn't make it into the party scene. And then I'm writing, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, like he brings this thing and he puts it in his hand. And I said, oh, I love that, you know? So I can't take responsibility for that. It's just, you know, a gift of the creative process.
And the flares, though, the flares too. I remember when Keith called me and he was like, "Oh my God, it just came to me, and there's these flares, and then one goes off, and then the other goes off, and then you see her, and then you see him," and he was just so passionate, and it was so beautiful the way he expressed it, and it's shot exactly the way he expressed it and the way it landed on the page, and it was just. It was a really precious thing. It was a gift. So.
And no, I don't mean no. Sorry, before you answer your question. The thing that I love about the creative process is I don't even know sometimes until way after, like, you know, the flares. Like, I don't know where that came from, but I realized after, like, I love it because a flare gun is, you know, something that's used in moments of distress. It's a signal to be. It's a signal. Sorry, the director's talking too much. When I was 3 years old, it's a thing we used to signal when we need help. You know, so in a fascinating kind of weird way, like even though they use it as a sort of celebratory thing, it's also a cry. It's also a distress signal. So I just find that so interesting. So, anyways, Josh, what do you have to say?
I was literally going to say exactly that, more or less. I mean, yeah, it's a distress signal, and it's used to convey the complete opposite of stress. It's used to convey I'm content and at peace with myself, and it's kind of welcoming in. I think partly Ballas, it's a message to him saying, I'm at peace with myself. You come to me when you're at peace with yourself. And I think the fact that they exchange the flare gun at the beginning when everything's great and the relationship is, going fine and everything's normal. I think that adds a whole nother layer to the flare gun aspect. So
It's like he's celebrating himself, a song of myself, as Walt
Yeah.
Whitman would say. Yeah. Let's wrap up with the question right here from this young lady.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for making this movie. It was really touching and beautiful and honest and real, and I'm better for having seen it, so thank you. One of the things I thought was really authentic about it was the fact that you resisted the Hollywood urge to tie everything up with a bow and have those like those conversations of closure. As audience members, we're not really given that, and I mean that's how life is. Like we don't always get closure, and I thought it made the film better. But I just wanted to know, as writers, as actors, how does that influence? How do you cultivate that in the writing process? How do you deal with that as an actor? Like you were mentioning, you have additional scenes in your mind related to your character. Just if you could speak to that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie's, from the get-go, reading the script, the movie was very authentic. There was no sort of Hollywood contrived moments or scenes or anything like that. And as an actor, that's what you want to be able to be a part of and be able to play around with, is that dialogue and, you know, the dynamics the dynamics between the characters. So, I mean, that's really the dream. So,
the reason why I was so attracted to the script was exactly for the reason that you explained, was because that it didn't have a final ending. It left you feeling almost confused, but still so light on your feet kind of thing, and warmed at the heart. And I'd never experienced that reading a script. Everything has a finale. It ends and it's contrived, exactly. And I think that was one of the things that was ultimately so attractive about the script upon first reading.
Yeah, what they said. Yeah, no, I mean, Keith's writing was amazing. As soon as I read it, I really wanted to do it, you know. You don't see roles that are this dynamic in that age group, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I knew I had to do it, and I really wanted to do it. And I think it really is about living our honest life, you know, and being as true to ourselves as we can, and that's how it ends. It doesn't end with a label, you know. We're not in a box. We are just living who we are, and I think that's the beauty of the film.
Yeah, he does so many things so well, by the way. Can we just have one more round of applause? But again, how you were saying this yesterday, again, how you sort of touched base in these trending roles on softening masculinity, you know, and allowing these male characters to be emotional, to feel vulnerable, instead of having that guarded macho, you know, outlook and aesthetic and physicality that every Hollywood movie carries. It was so nice it was refreshing to read and to watch it come to life.
Well, I had some of that, it just didn't go well.
Keith, you want to address this?
Yeah, I think it's I guess well, it's just what I like, for one thing. I like movies like that, and I don't necessarily consciously strive to do that. I just enjoy that. Life is a process. You know, we're not fixed. It's always slowly turning or turning quickly, and it's a discovery. So I like leaving opportunity for audiences to discover, to put themselves into the story through their own questions and curiosity, and discover something simultaneously in themselves as they discover in the film, if that's possible.
I don't think you can wrap up on a better question than that. Thank you all so much for being here. Congratulations on your
Thank you.
opening weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, the film is Giant Little Ones. Thank you so much.